everybody, I'm going to show you how to make a puffy sleeve. So this is my basic pattern for a puffy sleeve. Looks like this. It's higher at the top and it's a lot wider than a normal sleeve because you're going to gather it up. It also has this little curve along the bottom that gives you that nice poof. I think it makes a really cute sleeve. So first you're going to need a bodice to sew it into, whether it's a dress or a top. In my case, I'm making a little school uniform top. And then you'll need to cut out the sleeves, which I've already cut out. I've actually already sewn the seam together. This is like the armpit seam, but I cut it out of that same pattern piece. The next thing you want to do is also put in some little marks here to show where I'm going to stop my gathers. Right here. Those are already in my pattern piece, but if they're not, just put in some marks a few inches away from that armpit because you don't want the gathers in your, basically under your arm. You don't want it to be roughly under your armpit. That would be weird. So next thing I'm going to do is actually run a gathering stitch across the top and across the bottom between those two marks. And it'll help to have the center marked, so I also like to mark the center. Alright, now I've sewn those gathering stitches. Basically they're really wide stitches, the widest setting that my machine has, and you want to leave long tails on them. That way you can just use that to shrink it up and help it fit into your sleeve cuff here and into the arm. So what I'm going to do is actually sew the bottom cuff first. I already made this. It's really just like a rectangle that I sewed together in a tube. It's got some interfacing to make it a little bit more sturdy. You want to find the top of your sleeve, which at this point is a little hard to tell, but that's the top, so this is the bottom. So what I'm going to do is match up where the seams are. So I've got the seam here and the armpit seam on my sleeve. I'm going to match them up, pin it there, and then I'm also going to match up the center point on the opposite side. Those are good reference points. Make sure at this point also that you're sewing it right sides to right sides. So the sides you want showing should be touching. Alright, so now I have to make all of this fit into the cuff, nice and smooth. So that's where you're going to pull on the string, the thread. Be careful not to break it, and you want to distribute it as evenly as you can. You don't really need gathers in your right under your arm either. I just like to pull it and put a lot of pins in it as I go to get everything as smooth as possible. Lots of pins. So do the same on the other side. The more pins the merrier. So it should look like this. Just gonna put a few more pins to make sure nothing slides around. When you're sewing through all these layers, it'll want to move around while you're sewing. So the more pins, the better you can prevent that from happening. Alright, so now it's ready to be sewn. And that is after I sewed it together. Flip it inside out. You should have a nice little gathered area. Again, it shouldn't be real gathered back here. That's under your arm. Now the next step I'm going to do is gather up the top of the sleeve and sew it into the armhole. So for this, it's helpful to turn your top, or top of your dress, bodice, shirt, whatever, flip it inside out. Keep your sleeve the right side out, and then sort of put it inside. Again, you're gonna line up, I don't know what else to call them, your armpit seams, underarm seam. You're gonna line those up. So line up the underarm seam, the shoulder seam with the center point of the sleeve. Now you can gather in everything else to fit, just like we did with the cuff. Alright, now it's all finished. I flipped it back inside out. I haven't really ironed anything, but you guys can see what that looks like. Again, you can play with the poofiness. You can make it bigger, smaller. If it's not standing up enough, like this one, could have probably used a little interfacing. That'll help it puff up a little bit, or you can line it with tulle. I'm going to show you guys some other sleeves that I've done. I'm too lazy to get everything out of my closet, but here's a Wendy. It's kind of, I believe it's the same pattern, but instead of doing, obviously I used elastic, I finished it a different way at the bottom, which is really nice and comfy, has a lot of good movement, which is nice if they don't have like a cuff at the bottom. You can do that. You can even like tuck it under. And here is, again, that same pattern, I'm pretty sure, Eternal Sailor Mercury. So this one is actually lined with tulle to help it stand out a little bit. And obviously instead of a flat cuff, I have the little poofies that Naka Takeuchi loves so much. Other poofy sleeves. Here's another school uniform, one for Sailor Moon school uniforms. It's pretty much similar to what I just did, but it's a knit instead.